Do you speculate a nuclear war?
If things escalate between India and Pakistan, Pakistan decides to use tactical nukes, Pakistan will continue to improvise and innovate in its terrorist methodology, and they will continue to bleed India. For the first time, message was very loud and clear. Massive Islamist radicalization.
So again, it's all a religious propaganda.
Americans will be completely trapped in this, this big quagmire of global anti-America conflicts.
Why aren't they doing anything about it?
They lost their credibility right after they withdrew from Afghanistan.
It will be like a stepping stone for China to be a superpower.
Yes.
And again, so then America won't have a say there.
Yes.
Isn't that the case according to you?
Russians won't hesitate to use nukes.
So Donald Trump recently there was a failed assassination attempt on him.
But I guess that this is also, some sort of a propaganda, because, if they say that they had no clue about, someone was going to kill Trump, it's a little difficult to believe. If this man had been successful in killing Trump right now, what would have happened?
Recently, there has been a concerning spike in terrorism in northern India, coupled with assassination attempt on a US presidential candidate. These events have a far-fetching implication, not just for India, but for global security as well. To delve deeper into the threats India faces from terrorism and to analyze the broader significance of the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, I had the opportunity to sit down with Dr. Abhinav Pandya, the CEO and founder of Usanas Foundation, a leading think tank specializing in counter-terrorism. Dr. Pandya brings a wealth of knowledge and experience in counter-terrorism strategies, along with his valuable insights from his time in the United States. Join us for an insightful conversation set against the serene backdrop of the Aravali's in Udaipur as we explore these pressing issues that are shaping the security landscape in India and beyond. Before we start today's conversation, I've got one request. If you ever enjoyed the episode or got any value out of it, please subscribe to it. It really helps us to improve the content and bring bigger guests. Thank you again and enjoy the rest of the episode.
First, I would like to understand from you, there's a lot of internal threat we've been seeing for the last few months that is looming in Jammu and Kashmir. For a long time, India wasn't seeing a lot of terrorism. Where did it come from out of nowhere?
Thank you very much, Shivam. This is my second podcast with you. It has always been a pleasure talking to you. You have very interesting questions, always for your speaker. Okay?
Thank you.
Well, let me, start and state it at the outset only that I've always maintained that India's biggest security challenge comes from the internal security threat. And that is at present radicalization and terrorism. And in that too, I'll be very specific. It pertains to Islamist radicalization and terrorism. When I word the use Islamist, I make a very strong distinction. I'm not speaking anything against Islam as a religion, but the word Islamist means those organizations and groups or institutions who are trying to use Islam as an instrument to acquire political power and impose their totalitarian agenda on non-Muslims. This threat of terrorism and radicalization has always been the biggest security threat for India. Now coming to Kashmir, recently we have seen a major upsurge in the terrorist attacks in Kashmir. Well, frankly speaking, I'm not really surprised because as far as Kashmir is concerned, Pakistan has invested in nurturing this, proxy, this terrorist ecosystem in Kashmir for about 35 years. And now, expecting that whole ecosystem just to vanish or evaporate in few months right after the abrogation of Article 370 is just like living in a fool's paradise. It doesn't happen like that. They have made huge investments over the last 3 decades now. Or in fact, even more than that, because Major General Robert Cawthon, the founder of the ISI, he stated right in 1948, after Pakistan lost that war with India, that conventionally India will always be a superior power. So Pakistan's only chance remains in promoting terrorists and those proxy actors trying to disturb India's internal peace and security. So it was right there from the beginning. Now, after the abrogation of Article 370, Government of India should have initiated measures to control the engines of terrorism in Kashmir, which basically includes extremist organizations like Jamaat-e-Islami and even the separatist entities and their financial flows. But unfortunately, we kind of failed on that part. Certainly, there was a lot of resentment and lot of alienation among the people, because definitely they didn't like the abrogation of Article 370. But at the same time, we were pumping in a lot of tourists and, a lot of economic development package, which actually enriched the common people, and made them economically very powerful. So when you have this lethal combination of economic power and alienation and hatred against the state, then it's a proper recipe for, venting out your hatred and all that. However, in the present circumstance, I'm not blaming the common population as much as I'm blaming the Pakistan, because we have not yet seen any major instance of the civilian unrest or kind of a strife. But yes, Pakistan infiltrated a large number of terrorists after the abrogation of Article 370. First, they asked them to establish themselves and remain radio silent, because India was mostly using technical intelligence from 2016 to 2019 to neutralize all these terrorists. So Pakistan wanted a way to counter this. So they took a break for about almost an year or two after that. I mean, though they were continuing with their minor incidents, but then this gap period of, let's say 1 to 2 years or maybe 3 years after the abrogation of Article 370, they firmly established themselves, created new OGW networks, the support system, and new communication methods, and now they are back in the game, with all kinds of attacks, and and frankly speaking, we don't have that very sound intelligence on the ground currently, because we kind of changed our modus operandi after the abrogation of Article 370. Today, in Kashmir, you can see a lot of new officers, very young officers from the direct IPS cadre, they are being inducted, and they are being brought in from the duty cadre. They are posted as district police chiefs and all. Now, they may be very bright officers, but Kashmir is a very complex state. It is a very layered state. You need to have a very strong experience, at least let's say of about 10 to 15 years. Then only you should be posted as a district police chief there. Then only you can create your human intelligence network and find some good inputs, just to crack down on the terrorist. Unfortunately, these new young kids, they don't have it, and we are, basically, lacking things on the human footprint. Secondly, I must say infiltration is a major challenge, and despite the fact that, we have been exposed to this terrain and these borders for last 3.5 decades, infiltration continues to remain a challenge. That may be because of the terrain. Though we have installed a lot of sensors and extra equipments and gadgetry and all that, but still, I must say that since most of the recent attacks were orchestrated and executed by the foreign terrorists, infiltration is a major challenge that is happening to Punjab border also. In Punjab, Khalistani elements are also involved, and narco-terrorism is a major, facilitator of all this new terror game. So I guess, we are back with this whole terrorism as a new challenge, and now I think we must find new solutions. And finally, I would also like to say that I think now it's time we started asking the right questions, So it's not the question of why Pakistan has, ramped up terror activities in the recent past. See, Pakistan's problem is that Pakistan has always seen India as a Hindu India. And Pakistan's genesis lies in the idea of, very extremist version of Islam, that, we are a separate nation. Muslims constitute a separate nation, which was the basis of two-nation theory. So their problem with India is very religious. It's geopolitics also, but geopolitics is secondary. That's what I always say, If geopolitics,
more religious,
if geopolitics and territorial, concerns had been the main issues, we would have arrived at some solution, let's say, or this rivalry would have been somewhat like, the India's, rivalry with China or all that. But this is a very, something which is more like a civilizational battle, against Hindus or something like that, So Pakistan will continue to improvise and innovate in its terrorist methodology, and they will continue to bleed India internally and exploit all our fault lines, be it regional, be it caste fault lines, be it religious fault lines, and they will continue to damage India, because for them it's a civilizational war against infidels. So I think we need to think about some long-term solutions.
Right.
Now, what those solutions are, we can definitely, have a session or whatever.
So what is Prime Minister Narendra Modi's take on it? Because since his third term began, the first day when it was his swearing in, we saw an attack in Jammu, followed by 2-3 more attacks in Jammu Kashmir. Is there anything to do with him coming in the third term?
Definitely, tactically and in the immediate context, it has something to do with his coming to power. The Pakistan may want to embarrass this government, that in front of the core Hindu constituency, and just render their claims of making terrorism defunct hollow. Pakistan has always been using this terror tactic, okay, be it Congress government, be it BJP government. Okay. But with this government, particularly Prime Minister Narendra Modi, his only achievement and the real achievement is in the fact that he has understood what Pakistan wants, and he clearly stated right, after he came to power that terror and talks cannot go together. He tried his peace initiatives early in his tenure. If it didn't work out, after that he said that, well, no business, no talking. So that's something for which I would like to give a lot of credit to him. And then after that, he cracked down on terrorists in Kashmir, because the way Narendra Modi's government, launched this anti-terror operations in Kashmir, that was unprecedented. NIA worked very strongly against the terror financing networks, and they launched this operation all out, neutralizing all these terrorists. For the first time, message was very loud and clear that if you wield a gun, then you should be ready for the army men's bullet. Message was loud and clear. And that did help us a lot, because we could see the impact of that crackdown after the abrogation of Article 370. There was no stone pelting and there were no big large-scale terror incidents. Okay. But then, yes, that actually alarmed Pakistan. That made them equally more concerned that they're losing relevance in Kashmir. So they now need to find more ways and just ramp up terrorism again. But with that, I would also like to mention that over the last 35 years, the local population has undergone massive Islamist radicalization in Kashmir and in India also. So there's this huge constituency for these radical and extremist religious thoughts. So now it's an altogether different challenge. It's not just a bunch of proxy actors, working. There's a huge support system among the common people, among the masses. Again, with the Prime Minister Modi's third inning, I must say that they have taken steps, but then they need to do a lot more, because the problem has grown humongous. It has its proportions, its intensity has crossed that stage, where we can just manage with some casual and easy efforts. No, we cannot. No, because at a point you have to realize that when you waste a lot of time continuing your strategic blunders, and that's what we have done for the last 75 years. After that, situation comes to a stage where it becomes almost irreversible, to rectify things. Okay, we are quite close to that situation.
Is it?
Yes, we are quite close to that situation. Not just in Kashmir, but in the other parts of India too. You look at the condition in West Bengal. Look at what's happening in
Northeast, Manipur.
Not Manipur is a different problem, but I'm talking that's a different kind of terrorism. In Kerala, look at what happened in this small little remote sleepy city. This city is known for its weddings and tourist destinations, but here two fellows, the local Muslims, they've not been exposed to Pakistan, or they've not been to Syria or Iraq or any of those places, but they were bred in the totally local, very amicable communal environment. They went and slaughtered a person just the way, you could see those ISIS slaughter videos, in this city, just for, supporting that Nupur Sharma on Facebook, on social media.
You did spoke about that before.
Yes. So this is, if these things are happening in the small cities like Udaipur, that means situation has become very alarming, and Prime Minister Modi and his government need to think out of the box, Simply those traditional and conventional, bureaucratic, casual, ad hoc approach is not going to work anymore.
So I want to focus on the current attacks, because I need more clarity on it, since I'm not very...
Current attacks, yes, I must say that, there's a major intelligence issue right now, and you have about 55 to 60 foreign militants, traveling, like loitering around in Jammu region, and they have got those very new communication devices. We call them ICOM sets or something, We have not been able to decrypt them, so they are able to communicate with them. They have developed a new OGW network. Regarding this, I must say that during the times when these regional parties were ruling in Kashmir, the local parties, they made strong efforts to settle Kashmiris residents, the Kashmiris from the valley, with separatist and extremist leanings. So they settled them in Jammu region. They fabricated all the paperwork and all that. Since they were in the power, so they could manage the local patwaris and tehsildars and all that. So those settlers with separatist and extremist leanings have surrounded the Jammu region. They have made bases in the various parts of Jammu also. Now, Jammu is a very strategic town. It's hardly 12 kilometers away from the border. Okay? That's going to be a very serious problem for India, because if terrorists infiltrate from that region, originally Kashmiri people with the separatist leanings and all, they can provide very good facilitating work for them, work as OGWs and all. In case if there's a conventional war and Pakistani army, decides to, launch an attack from that region, this system can act as a good support system for them. Okay? Thirdly, in this Jammu region, the local Gujar community is also alienated, and and they are also, so traditionally they were very liberal and they were moderate, secular. They had their tribal identity more important for them than the religious identity. And if you still, if when you meet them, you find that a lot of common, cultural practices between them and the Hindus. But now they are coming heavily under the influence of Deobandi extremists, and you can see the rapid expansion of Deobandi madrasas in the Jammu region. So they are also coming under the influence of separatists and extremists, and they are acting as OGWs.
So are we able to label these militants or proxies that you said are from Pakistan? Are we able to label them yet?
Yes, they are. You see the kind of weapons we have recovered from that. They are mostly NATO weapons. Yesterday they recovered that Austrian stair gun or something like that. So they're using M4 carbines. The kind of training that they have received. Previously, when they were local Kashmiri militants, they could not fight, and they could not kill our people with that expertise. Here they are killing people. They are just they're doing a lot of casualties of our soldiers and even senior officers, and they are running from that place.
What groups are they from? So the current.
So basically, it's primarily Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed. I would say Jaish more. They are using a lot of proxy names like Kashmir Tigers and TRF and all. So that is to give these groups an indigenous color, that that if you use the name of Kashmir Tigers, international community thinks that this is some kind of a resistance movement going on, and people of Kashmir are waging a struggle against this alleged Indian occupation or so-called discrimination against the minorities or something like that. And you're able to give that color, and it also helps you evade the scrutiny of global watchdogs like FATF.
True. Since you've been reading a lot and you've been into counter-terrorism for a long time and studying India's terrorism stance as well, you are certain that these are more JEM and LET?
Yes, they are perfect. They're absolutely, because see, in Pakistan, we have to understand that, we try to differentiate these things in India. And and we try to look at these entities as separate entities like Jaish and LAT and other. But if you have slightly knowledge, slight knowledge of their internal systems, and how ISI works, then your understanding will be very different. See, they have created all these different, appearances that, this is LET, this is Jaish. But ultimately, the real, source in this entire ecosystem of terrorism is ISI primarily. And ISI raises different groups for different purposes. Lashkar-e-Taiba is like, you can call it soldiers without uniform, And you can even find Pakistan Army's regular and irregular troops in that, former soldiers, working in Lashkar. In the recent groups, the recent attacks, the terrorists who infiltrated, they include proper Pakistani army officers, former officers, or former Pakistani soldiers, army soldiers. So the bonds and the connections between these terrorist groups and Pakistani army, they are organic. Okay, so it is just that here we say that it's Lashkar and all that. In Pakistan, if you talk to the militants, they would say agency. They'll just say that, that's it. Likewise, Jaish is deeply embedded in Pakistani society because Jaish belongs to that Deobandi ideology. Deobandis have a long history of more than 150 years in Pakistan. So, and they have very deep inroads in Pakistani army. So, these connections are very strong. So, here we may say that, well, this is Jaish or Lashkar or Pakistan. Ultimately, it's all one. That's it.
Quite a tricky situation for India as well. So, it's basically more like a religious upfront, right? It's and we see the same religious kind of wars or conflicts happening in places like Palestine and Israel as well. What are your thoughts on that, sir?
Well, Israel-Palestine is also, once again, I've always maintained, I'll say that it's like a civilizational war between the Jews and the Christians, Jews and the Muslims, and right now it seems that Israel is on the offensive, and they have like, I just saw today, I saw that they were attacking Houthis, Houthi settlements, and they've killed about 40,000 people, Hamas people. So, well, if we are talking about
Hamas or Houthis?
No, they've killed Houthis
already.
They attacked
Hamas
today, but they've killed 40,000, people in that Palestinian region. And they've almost completely, decimated the Hamas leadership. Okay, now they'll be getting after Hezbollah. Now they'll be getting after Hezbollah, and hopefully they are able to destroy them too. Because see, this is ultimately a fight against a very totalitarian extremist ideology of Islamic extremism, which these groups like Hamas and Hezbollah represent. We all talk about the territorial issues and this two-state solution between Palestinian and Israelis and all, but well, I feel that during those times of Arab nationalism, these territorial issues were more important. But now it's primarily about this extremist ideology, and Hamas says that, I mean, their aim is to destroy the nation of Israel, and I don't think that they believe in the idea of two-state solution, Hamas. So all those who are saying that two-state solution is the ultimate panacea, well, I quite disagree with that, because I believe that, if these groups have those extremist, doctrines working behind their mind, then even if Israel agrees to the two-state solution, they'll continue their struggle.
Yeah.
Because they want to destroy, because for them it's like a religious mission. And now I feel that, the Biden government was a bit apprehensive about, supporting Israel in the fullest manner. But Trump looks like he's all set to become the next president of the United States. And he has made a statement, like even day before yesterday, he said that, well, you release our hostages, otherwise I'm going to make it hell for you. So I think the Israeli action will be tough. And I see this conflict becoming more and more intense. And Iran, right now it doesn't look likely, but at some stage, if it gets involved, then definitely. Right now, it doesn't look that likely, because Iran is trying to avoid that escalation and conflict. But if Israel goes very strongly against Hezbollah, then Iran will have to intervene, because Hezbollah is Iran's, proxy group. Iran has been nurturing them, And if Iran intervenes, the things can become really bad. And even the other Arab states, UAE and Saudi, they are well aware of Islamic extremism. But then the Arab street is heavily under the influence of the extremists. So if the conflict becomes really bad and it gets to the Arab streets, these Arab monarchies may be in the problem.
They'll have to choose between
the midterm or in the distant future. So they'll have to choose, or they'll be uprooted. All these groups, extremist groups, will become very powerful. So there's a civilizational war ultimately.
It's all from the religious.
We saw what happened in that Arab Spring. People initially celebrated it as some kind of a democratic spring, but it was all sorts of Islamic extremists ganging up together, and whatever little stability prevailed in that region, it got completely dismantled. You can see today Syria, and so in Egypt, once again, they are back with the military system.
You also mentioned Iraq and its proxies from
Iran and its proxies.
Iran from Houthis, Hamas, and Hezbollah. But there's a reason that they do not fight wars themselves.
One can fight wars themselves, but then these are different ways of fighting wars and sabotage and all that. Because if you sometimes you don't have that conventional capability, or sometimes the risks associated with getting into a proper conventional war. Let's say if it becomes a nuclear war, then that's why these states nurture these proxy groups, who have this advantage of being projected as kind of resistance fighters or insurgents and all that, and they can do a major amount of damage to government. They have they are like off limits. They can attack civilians, they can attack the military, and they can weaken your economy. And they using proxies also helps in the propaganda war, because there's a huge power asymmetry between these proxies and the states, and it's very difficult to differentiate between the civilians and the terrorists or these proxy actors. So sometimes if the states if they in their action against these proxy terrorist groups, if they end up killing civilians, then the states which is supporting these proxies, let's say Iran, they can use that incident as a good occasion for launching a propaganda information war against the state which is fighting these terrorist proxies. That's what Pakistan does, that's what the Iran does.
So again, it's all a religious propaganda.
Yeah, I mean, these are different various elements of this war. Okay, the propaganda war is one part, and using proxies is one part.
Right.
You have multiple ways of damaging, harming your enemy.
So you were mentioning how Trump, if he is elected as the next president of the US, his stance for Israel is going to be much stronger.
Yes.
What about in the current Russia-Ukraine war? What is his stance going to be there?
I think in the current Russia-Ukraine war, Trump is going to completely change, and he's not very supportive of this, backing Ukraine against Russia. So I think he's going to ease off in that place, and some extreme versions even say that he's going to wrap it up like this war in 30-40 minutes, and
that's what he claims.
Yeah. Even in the past also, like we have seen that Trump regards China as the real threat and not Russia. So that's the problem with the American deep state and Democrats. They're still obsessed with that Russian thing, and I think if Trump comes, he is not really keenly interested in this Russia-Ukraine thing. and he'll try to. It's good if he comes, because there'll be some amicable solution to this. Trump is not a transatlanticist, like he's not a pro-Atlanticist man. So there'll be issues with the Europe, because he has always said that the European nations need to contribute their 2% share to NATO. So all those NATO lovers and transatlanticists and that global welfare liberal cabal, they will be very uncomfortable. People are saying that the Western Europe will be very worried about their security if Trump comes, because Trump is not really interested in this transatlanticist thing and this anti-Russia campaign and all that. But I guess that this is also some sort of a propaganda, because I'm not really sure if Russia wants to invade and conquer the entire Europe. It doesn't look like that, But since these people want to discredit Trump, so they're raising his opponents these false alarms that that if Trump comes, then he will just withdraw from this Ukraine thing, and after that Russia will be a major security threat to Europe. So I think these things are too far-fetched. But yes, as far as the Middle East is concerned, Trump is going to focus a lot on that region, and certainly I see that there will be a lot more tougher action against Hamas and Hezbollah, and he'll try to bring back that Israel, Saudi Arabia rapprochement back on the track. Diplomacy will have a major role in the Middle East after if Trump comes. Also, IMAC, this whole strategic connectivity project, may ultimately see the daylight, if he comes back. Okay. So these are the things which we expect. But then, yes, this is something which he has planned, and it's not always that what you plan comes out, becomes a reality. In America also, we are seeing a lot of internal, situations, strife, problems. Okay, so how successful he is, that remains a question.
So NATO recently celebrated 75 years, but of course they were still, under the issue of Russia-Ukraine in their mindset. What do you think the future of Ukraine lies? Because they're neither getting them into NATO nor letting them be it themselves. Ukraine was very much invited for the NATO meet in the US, but there was no concrete agenda or finalization of what are your thoughts on that?
Now it is more than evident that Ukraine is like materially, it's like in the bad shape, it's destroyed. Okay, Russia is making advances in that region. Right from the beginning, it was always clear that I don't know what went wrong in the Ukrainian leadership's mind, but then avoiding a big elephant right in your neighborhood, an elephant like Russia, a big entity like Russia, and taking support of Americans, just to fight war against that, it was an insane decision. So it was bound to fail. It was bound to be like this only. And Americans, they lost their credibility right after they withdrew from Afghanistan, because they withdrew their support from that government in Afghanistan, and Taliban could succeed in Afghanistan just in a matter of a day, even less than that. And the so-called government raised by Americans had nothing to do. They had to leave the country, and they were killed. Or so likewise, this whole war, Russians tried to convey it very strongly that NATO should not expand in my region. I think that's something which Americans should have respected, because Russia is a superpower. Russia was a superpower. So unnecessarily pursuing that goal, well, logically, you can always define that countries are sovereign and they have right to choose and all that. But then, yes, you have to worry about the power dynamics also. IR is not something which is, primarily and entirely driven by logic and reason or ethics or morality. Power dynamics play a major role.
Definitely.
So since they did that, and now, they are also fighting on this Israeli front, this Middle Eastern front. They are fighting in this Ukrainian front. Tomorrow, if China does something on the Taiwan front, then Americans will be completely trapped in this, this big quagmire of global anti-America conflicts. And for the future of Ukraine, I don't see that. It's going to be there's going to be any lasting peace there, because even Europe's internal house is in disorder right now. But yes, Russians are going to make major advances, and if things escalate, I think Americans will have, some sense in their mind not to escalate things, because Russia is in a very different mood right now. I was in Russia recently, and I found that, the country has a very entirely new level of confidence. an elevated degree of confidence. Their economy is growing at a very fast pace, booming. They're in a war economy mode. They don't have internal issues like Islamic extremism problem, all those multicultural and race riots and all that issues, the migrants problem. They don't have those issues. In Western Europe and America, the internal issues, the polarizations, they are very severe. Political instability is a major problem. In France, we just saw that the liberals came back to power. Now all those migrants and those Islamic extremists, they will have a free run. But Russia has a very stable dictatorship, I guess. And they have a different value system. They stand for traditional values now. Dr. Alexander Dugin and his team who is advising Putin, they have presented an entirely new world order. That's a multipolar world order.
Even after 16,000 sanctions on Russia, they are still booming. Like the economy is booming. They're doing so much business with the global south and capitalizing on it, and West has nothing to answer for it.
So I think the West should understand that Ukraine is very crucial to them. For them, this geopolitics, this whole entire region, South Caucasus, Ukraine, these are traditional Russian strongholds. So getting into those areas and giving more support to Ukraine is only ultimately going to escalate things. And I feel that if things get escalated beyond a point, Russians won't hesitate to use nukes.
So Donald Trump recently there was a failed assassination attempt on him. What do you think? Who was behind that?
Well, it's difficult to comment who was behind that because the guy was assassinated and killed, that Matthew Crooks, and in his video he said that he's a Republican, and he hated Trump and all that. But that, well, I would like to raise a few questions here, John F. Kennedy was killed. We still don't know who killed him, America, with one of the best global intelligence, agencies, they have the finest surveillance, systems and intelligence agency, keeping a track of each and everything that happens across the world, even in the space also.
Everywhere.
Advising the countries, that, your prime minister is going to get assassinated, running operations, If they say that they had no clue about, someone was going to kill Trump, it's a little difficult to believe. I find it a little difficult to believe, See, if it had been some country like Pakistan or some African country, then, okay, fine, we could have believed. Even in India, with far less, advanced or your intelligence systems and technology, we are able to predict things. So in that country also, if they are saying that they had no clue, that's something which is difficult to believe. Secondly, we all know that there's this big lobby working against Trump because Trump's value systems and beliefs are contrary to what American deep state believes, what the Democrats believe. So there are attempts, going on in different quarters to prevent him from coming to power, because if he comes to power, he'll take some major decisions. Like, let's say if he finds some kind of a quick solution to this whole Russia-Ukraine war, then your whole arms lobby, which was waiting for all the big orders to be sent to Ukraine, they will be facing a major loss. So there are vested interests who are working against Trump. So you cannot rule out the possibility that there were much deeper actors working on this assassination plot. It is just totally inconceivable that one person comes with his AR-15 rifle and shoots a presidential candidate for the US. That's unbelievable.
It must be backed from someone.
Yes.
So what are your thoughts, since we are in the subject of US, and what are your thoughts on the American gun policy? The availability of guns for Americans is so easily available.
Well, I've lived in the US, and that country was almost like a second home for me. I've lived there for like 3-4 years. It's a very sensitive issue in the American system, gun policy. Very easy to get your gun license and everything. Several governments have tried to put a stop on that, but they failed because NRA is very strong. Republicans are very strong. So these are like national level issues. But then this is causing a major damage.
You see that
major drug problem there. You have these people, young boys and kids, facing psychological problems, personality depressions, crises, etc. Sometimes they get these easy guns and they go on a shootout killing sprees. It's going to be extremely dangerous because American society is already a very polarized society. Now imagine a situation, if this man had been successful in killing Trump right now, what would have happened? There would have been riots, people would have come out on the streets with all those guns and automatic rifles, and they would have started killing people. So that's the biggest damage, which these, freely available guns can do in the American society. So I think those are the issues, which may haunt the American, or, which may like damage their
You see
internal
a gun
systems
attack
sometimes.
every
Yes.
month there.
Yeah.
Why aren't they doing anything about it? I fail to
Because there are
understand.
big lobbies, there are big weapons lobbies, they are producing weapons, and there are political lobbies. NRA is very strong. I told you they're supported by Republicans, and this gun manufacturing. If you look at America's history, this was a place well known for its cowboys, and those hat wielding cowboys, and there's with their very flashy pistols and revolvers and those guns. So country has that old culture, where those bandits used to come from Europe, and for the booty hunting, and for gold treasures and all that. So country has that old culture, particularly in the south, in the Texas region, So traditionally they have been very strong, and it's a political issue. So they will not let any change happen to the gun laws. I would also like to mention that there are some advantages to it also. So in the American society, like common people are more exposed to using weapons and handling guns. So in that case, if if there is there's a kind of a terrorist actors working, or then they can defend themselves. Like for example, last time we spoke about the killing of the Kanhaiya Kumar in Udaipur by 2 local Muslims who out of that radical extremist agenda. People in India, it's very difficult to get a gun license. So they don't have that temperament. They're not exposed to guns physically. So everything comes in a package. If you have that gun sensitivity, gun like temperament, you try to focus more on your physical strength also and all that. Here, if the fellow had any weapon on him at that moment, or if he had known how to shoot that, he would have killed those terrorists. So there are like both merits and demerits.
Yeah. So since we are on the subject of US, and we must talk about the other presidential candidate as well, the current president of the US, Joe Biden, he seems a little shaken at the moment with his health. What do you? I need your comment.
His health has been shaken like ever since he became the president. Last time also, when we have seen different memes and different incidents where he tripped and he misspelled names, and I think at one point he was calling Kamala Harris Trump, and so that's a funny case. Today it seems that when he says that he'll drop out only if he gets some direct orders from God. Perhaps he has cultivated some direct line with Jesus Christ or God. So his health has been a challenge. But he's not quitting the position, and I think now they've detected corona. I don't know whether it's something like which is real, or like they just want to put him like in isolation so that he doesn't talk to media, and finally he just gets out of the fray. But there's a lot of opposition among the Democrats, and even their sponsors and funders. They have already said that well, we're not going to give you money. And I think there was one group which they released 700 crores, but then they said that well, we're not going to give it unless this man resigns.
Is there any other worthy Democratic candidate according to you?
Kamala Harris, they are mentioning Kamala Harris is one of them.
Michelle
Obama, that is the perfect candidate.
I
but
believe
I think now it will be difficult to beat Trump.
True, because it's very short of a period.
Yeah, short of a period, and Trump has the best part with him is that he says things very clearly. Democrats, they don't have an agenda. Like, what do you offer to the people?
But he got also a lot of sympathy with the attack
with that attack, he has got that sympathy. So now it's.
I think it's very evident that Trump is going to be next president.
Yes.
Now, since we talk about that, so I recently was reading about Trump's ideology towards Taiwan, which is another area of conflict which is looming. Trump was saying that Taiwan must pay US for protection.
Yeah.
What is that kind of a statement to you?
Well, Trump is a businessman. He has always said that, so if he says that impels, danger, basically that conveys very strongly that Taiwan is on their own. And, I don't know to what extent Americans would help them. And Taiwan needs to be little more alarmed and concerned.
But if the US won't support them, China, it will be like a stepping stone for China to be a superpower.
Yes.
And again, so then America won't have any say then.
Yes.
Isn't that the case according to you?
Well, when it comes to America supporting other countries, okay, give me one example where they are fully backed, be it Vietnam, Afghanistan, Ukraine, So people are already doubtful of the American credibility. Now, but if Americans in this case, if they don't come to Taiwan's rescue, then they are going to lose it completely. Okay, But the question is that, on how many fronts Americans can fight, they are fighting in the Middle Eastern front, on Ukraine front, okay, and Chinese are too clever, like, if with all these different fronts, if they start something in the Taiwan, okay, will the Americans be able to sustain and support war in these multiple areas?
Doubt that.
Yeah.
I see. So Taiwan is with itself now.
I wouldn't say with itself, but yes, I mean, what would be the nature of American support to Taiwan? That, I find it difficult to comment on that.
Well, we must talk about India-US relations. India always have a good relations with Trump. Prime Minister Modi has, really respects Trump. Do you think that that's being followed on?
Well, I think we first started with the India-US relations. Let me begin with that. India-US relations have never been like very warm, okay, well, we have always talked of these two countries being democratic countries and natural allies and all, but if you look at our history, there were always problems, there was no genuine love lost between the two countries, okay. During the 1971 war, Americans supported Pakistan when they were killing 30 lakhs Hindus in Bangladesh, and it was the Russians who came to our rescue, India's support. In the recent past, after that, after 1990, we diversified our foreign policy because of the Soviet Union's disintegration. Things becoming better. But then, after the nuclear explosions that India did, nuclear test, they sanctioned us, which again strained the relationship. Then we signed civilian nuclear deal. In the recent past, Modi, in the Modi's era, there was a lot of talk of India-US relationship becoming much better. But then, this whole Niger episode and Americans, supporting, giving shelter to the Sikh extremists and Khalistanis in the America. And
that's
also
in Canada.
In America also. Pannu is in America, and in Canada, in fact, the government itself is a Khalistani in Canada. Khalistani, this party by Jagmeet Singh, is has very strong sympathies towards Khalistanis. They are supporting this Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. In the Parliament, they kept a silence of a few minutes for Hardeep Singh Nijjar, who is a declared terrorist in India, and in that Americans are supporting them. So this has strained our relationship.
Even the Russia-Ukraine war that we didn't listen to their sanctions.
They were pressurizing us a lot, and they were trying to bully us a lot. So I feel that as far as India-US relationship is concerned, this is more or less going to be very transactional even in the future also. Because, they have technology, then we have markets and all that. So I think more or less the framework of India-US relationship will be confined to those few things only, that we're getting technology from them, they're getting markets from us, some business, pure transactionalism. Yes, Trump's coming to power may make some small differences. That is because Trump may have a slightly better equation with Prime Minister Modi because of the ideological similarity.
True.
So, because of that, we may find things a little more easier. But yes, I suspect that things will be as warm as they were between India and Russia. India-US relationship will largely be transactional.
Yeah, that's true. So there's a lot of technological transfer also from the US. Yes. So our beautiful conversation today started from an internal conflict, that is terrorism for us, and then from the US and of course the rest of the world. So it was quite insightful for us. But I must ask you one question. It is a very strange world we are living in at the moment. Do you speculate a nuclear war?
I don't expect it and I don't want it. But yes, if you ask me as an analyst, I feel that I should be ruthlessly objective in my judgment. If things escalate beyond the point between countries in the war, and if they escalate, then definitely we cannot rule out the possibility of a nuclear war. It can be possible. Because like, let's say if things escalate between India and Pakistan, Pakistan decides to use tactical nukes. If it begins with the tactical nukes, it may go to the next level. If it between Russia and Ukraine, if Americans are not relenting and they are just trying to completely push the Russians to the corner, and supplying weapons and missiles, which Ukrainians are firing into their mainland, then they may use tactical nukes.
And then there's Taiwan.
In Taiwan, a little less likely, but yes, overall, if these are multiple war theaters across the globe, if they are all converging into some common, big problem, okay. Right now, it seems a little unlikely, but if we already have these, little indications that they are converging into some sort of a global, bigger conflict, because we can see this new alliance, like let's say Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, These are the new, alliance countries. They are coming up, and on the other side you have America, Western Europe, Israel. So these different, groups, we see them in emergence right now, So one cannot completely rule out the possibility of, these different multiple conflicts converging into some major global conflict. And if that happens, then certainly, I mean, nuclear use of nukes is just a part of the process, If it starts from one corner, then definitely
There's no stopping it.
There's no stopping it there.
And then there's the end of humanity.
Yes, yeah.
Because there's, we
to,
can't.
I mean, what is the extent of the damage, to what level it goes, that is difficult to comment right now. But yes, one cannot rule out the possibility.
Lovely, sir. This has been a very insightful conversation for me, sir, in terms of the entire geopolitical structure at the moment. I'm more hopeful towards, much more peace and tranquility in humanity. Thank you so much for this conversation, sir. Really means a lot. Has been quite an insightful one, I'm sure, for the audience as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you enjoyed the episode, make sure to like, share, subscribe. Until then, keep reimagining yourself and know that the power of change lies within you.